I'm sure we'd all like to bag on 2K games some more. How about that? Do you feel like bagging on 2K games some more? I mean, fuck 2K games, right? 2K games, bunch of wankers. So we talked about NBA 2K18 the other day, and how people aren't happy with it because it's basically a free-to-play game that they've charged money for. Their virtual currency has completely undermined the entire experience, and people are understandably a bit miffed about that. One person who was miffed was a reviewer of the game, someone who reviewed the game for website The Sixth Axis. Sorry, I said that a little bit wrong. The Sixth Axis. It was an old... I don't know if you remember the Sixth Axis stuff that they used to talk about last generation. That's what they're named after. Anyway, they review NBA 2K18 and give it a 3 out of 10. Fucking good as far as I'm concerned. Not so good as far as 2K Games is concerned. And last night there was a bit of a kerfuffle involving the potential that 2K Games had pressured the Sixth Axis into taking down the review, which sort of happened. The review score was removed temporarily, while emails that we're not privy to were exchanged between the editor of the Sixth Axis and 2K Games. So this 3 out of 10 score, which was already recorded on OpenCritic, disappears. It just disappears after 2K voices concerns that the score was a protest against the fee-to-pay mechanics, against the microtransactions, against the virtual currency. And they were able to back that up by the fact that the word protest was used in the review. Now, I don't give a fuck. I think if you're fucking up your game that much with a really horrible, contemptuous business model, you deserve everything you fucking get. That game has been absolutely torn apart, broken, snapped into bits to fit this fucking economy. This fucking economy that these publishers want to rub their dicks all over. NBA 2K18 is a $60 game with the business model, with the economy of some of the shittiest mobile free-to-play games out there. They're in no position to preach ethics to anyone, reviewer or otherwise, and they're certainly in no position to get salty and whiny when someone calls them out on what I consider exploitative, manipulative, downright fucking scummy business tactics. Now, this story is all resolved. It resolved overnight. The score is back. 2K Games isn't blacklisting the Sixth Axis, but one wonders if that's resolved only because this kind of blew up on NeoGAF and Reddit and a few other places. Streisand effect obviously kicked in. A whole bunch of other people saw this 3 out of 10 score who otherwise wouldn't have, because that's what happens when you stomp your feet about a review score you don't like. The Sixth Axis now and the reviewers say that there was no pressure. I say there was. Even just as an outsider looking in, I say whenever a publisher contacts an editor-in-chief to complain about a review score, it doesn't matter if they actively threaten blacklists, it doesn't matter if they tell you to take the score down or we're pulling ads. The pressure is pressure. It reminds me of a personal incident, something that happened to me many years ago in my career. I don't think I've ever talked about it in public. I don't think I've ever talked about the story, but it concerns Rage. I don't know if you remember Rage. That was id Software's game, the one that wasn't Doom. Came out a couple of years ago, Xbox 360, PC of course, PS3, that era. Post-apocalyptic-y, first-person shooter, looked a bit like Mad Max with mutants. It was an alright game. I thought it was good. I just didn't like it as much as a lot of other reviewers. I gave it a 7 out of 10. A fair score, I thought, a good score. By my metrics, certainly 7. That's worthy praise. Bethesda thought otherwise. So I get this email from a Bethesda rep after the review goes up. I reviewed it for Destructoid, I think that's where I still was. So I get this email being all, we're a bit puzzled as to why you gave it a 7. That's how it's couched, as sort of this friendly sort of banter, sort of, we're a little bit puzzled. Or words to that effect. This isn't verbatim, this was years ago. You said this and this and this positive about the game. You said this and this negative about the game. We think you should have scored it higher. We're a little bit worried that you didn't score it correctly. They sort of, that's what they do. They sort of impugn your credibility to yourself. Try and make you doubt what you said and all that kind of stuff. And it can be really friendly. It can be this sort of, oh hey, we're just a bit concerned. But that's still pressure. That's still someone trying to apply human faces to the game that you're critiquing to try and make it socially awkward for you to score what you're scoring, even if they're not explicitly threatening you with anything. They start behaving like angry commenters, but again, like without the angry persona. Sort of a friendly version of it. But the motive is still the same. It's make you keep justifying the number you used, even if you wrote 2,000 words or so, justifying it anyway. I didn't think too much of it at the time because I'd been under worse pressure before and it was just silly. I argued, in my case, successfully. They eventually were like, yeah, well, I suppose. But, and I was like, I'm giving it a 7. That's what I gave it. That's what it is. I wrote about why it got what it got. Of course, then there was that game Hydrophobia, when I reviewed that and the developer kept phoning up our sports editor Samir to pressure him into contacting me so they could get my details to pressure me to change the review score because they didn't like that because I thought their game was fucking shite. Leaving messages on my phone, all that sort of stuff. And again, no explicit threats, no fucking hell, they made Hydrophobia. Are they going to threaten to blacklist me? Ooh. But it's still pressure. In that case, it was borderline fucking harassment. But I get this sense that publishers, these days in particular, are very sensitive about microtransactions being brought up in reviews themselves. Part of the reason I went independent is because I wanted to avoid sponsorship conflicts and all that kind of stuff. And the impression I got before I decided to go it alone was that bringing up microtransactions in reviews was detrimental to potential sponsorships and that sort of stuff. So of course now I mention microtransactions a lot. You might have noticed. And here we have 2K being uncharacteristically whingy about a review that many people wouldn't have seen. And they didn't like the protest against their VC. Maybe in their mind they consider microtransactions very different beasts from the games themselves and think, and again this is them wanting to have their cake and fuck it too as usual, they want these shitty business models, but they want the game to be judged on the game's own merits, even if the shitty business models have shitted up the game on its own merits. But ultimately 2K Games, where the fuck do you get off having pride at this stage? After you've already sold out your creative integrity to embrace this VC bollocks, you got no leg to stand on. In terms of principle, you've got fucking nothing. You don't get to have pride in this. You don't get to have enough pride to be upset at review scores. You've got no shame or dignity left. You are grasping and pathetic. 3 out of 10's too good for you. Other reviews, of course, complained about the VC, but they gave the game a higher score. It's that 3 out of 10 tied with the VC that 2K don't like. And again, fuck them. Who cares what they don't like? A lot of people don't like what they did to NBA 2K18. They still fucking did it because fuck people, yay money. As much as people will say that this is now resolved, to me, it still remains very interesting. I'm highly interested in the idea of publishers being sensitive to this, that this is a raw nerve to them. A lot of the time we see them talk about this sort of stuff, about their monetization, their various business practices. A lot of it comes down to, our audience likes it, we make money doing it, or we can't afford to do it any... Basically, all of their excuses boil down to, we don't give a fuck what you think. But then you get an instinctive reaction from 2K's PR department here, where it shows, I know, maybe they do give a fuck what people think. Certainly not enough to change their business model, certainly not enough to stop being fuckwits, but maybe enough to where being a fuckwit is just that little bit less easy for them in life. It's a little bit less efficient, a little bit less convenient. And if it leads to things blowing up in 2K's face like this, to where they look like a bunch of really petty little wankers, I am all for that. As far as the website itself goes, I guess I still get the threat of blacklisting. I understand I'm in a privileged position, being independently supported. And now I buy almost all my games. I'm under no pressure to meet embargoes and stuff like that. But I think even as a blog, even as a game website, even as a game journalist, what have you, I'd fucking wear, and I do, even back when I was doing that sort of job, when I had more traditional games media job descriptions, I wore my blacklists like a fucking badge of honor. Konami blacklisting me is still one of my favourite fucking things to have happen because fuck them. I'll buy Metal Gear Solid day one. I'll still review it. They can't fucking stop me. Fuck them. And it's a shame there are a lot of outlets that at least don't feel that they can have that attitude, which again is part of the reason why I decided to be the littlest hobo and wander around without a master, just fixing things in America for people. I don't really do any of that last part. I don't wander about at all. Too fat for it. Too fat for wandering about, and I'm not a dog. I don't help people either. I just sort of be fat and talk about video games. Anyway, point is, you know, I understand the fear that smaller games blogs, games media can have when publishers apply this pressure. And again, this is why I still maintain it's pressure, with or without threat. They took that score down, even temporarily, because having a publisher breathe down your neck isn't great. And there are some companies that are known to be volatile about this. Warner Brothers is one. I hear stories about Warner Brothers Interactive. Oh, you better keep saying nice things about them or they'll fucking pull their support. They will pull review copies like there's no fucking tomorrow. And the funny thing is, me saying that, what's Warner Brothers gonna do about it? Blacklist me? They already have. They don't send me shit. And then once you realise that, once you realise that they've already done the worst they can do, you find it very freeing as a critic. Because that really is all they have over you. That's all they've got, is we won't send you free copies of games. And I realise if every publisher did that to a review site, maybe that review site wouldn't be able to afford to stay in business. By the same token though, if you've got to stay in business by acquiescing to the companies who you absolutely should not be acquiescing to, who should not have power in this dynamic at all, because that instantly flavours your criticism, your position is so fucking fragile, you might be better off looking at something else to do. And this isn't me wanting to have a pop at the Sixth Axis, by the way. The Sixth Axis, by the way. I don't recall ever having any ill will towards them. I don't recall them ever having ill will towards me. Maybe they have in the past, but certainly I've been fine with them. They're a nice source of news sometimes. It's a good little site. But fuck publishers. Just fuck them. Fuck them. Obligatory, not all publishers, etc. Yes, I know I'm generalising, but in general, fuck them. And especially fuck publishers like 2K, who cashed in even the slightest sliver of a dog in this fight the moment they decided to sell their entire artistry out. The day they partook of the undignified slop of the virtual currency is the day they gave up any fucking right to care. Right or not though, I'm glad they do care, because again, fuck 'em.